In the archives of the Pennsylvania Historical Society, there exists a collection of documents so extraordinary that they have been kept from public view for over a century. Cabinet 37, Drawer 14, contains a series of interviews, medical evaluations, and personal correspondences dating from 1863 to 1871, all concerning a child known only as the Gettysburg Boy. The yellowed pages document what may be the most thoroughly recorded case of inexplicable memory transference in American history. This is not merely a tale of childhood imagination. It is a case study in the fragile boundary between life and death, memory and identity, documented with a clinical precision that defies easy dismissal. The archivist who currently oversees these records has noted that the paper itself bears the chemical markers of its age, the acid content and fiber composition dating unquestionably to the mid-19th century, eliminating any possibility of modern fabrication. The story begins in October of 1863, just 3 months after the bloodiest battle ever fought on American soil. Dr. James Waterston, a respected Philadelphia neurologist, was summoned to the home of Edward and Margaret Holloway in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, approximately 30 miles from the Gettysburg battlefield. The Holloways were a family of impeccable standing. He a mathematics professor at Dickinson College, she the daughter of a prominent local judge. Their townhouse on West High Street stood as a testament to academic respectability, its shelves lined with scientific journals and classical literature, not the sensationalist publications of the day. What prompted them to contact Dr. Waterston was a series of increasingly disturbing behaviors exhibited by their 5-year-old son Samuel. Samuel Holloway was born on April 17, 1858, a fact meticulously recorded in both family Bible entries and municipal records. His birth had been unremarkable, attended by the family physician, Dr. Henry Lambert, who noted in his records, a healthy male child of sound constitution. By all accounts, he had been a perfectly ordinary child until late July of 1863, when his parents noted a dramatic shift in his behavior. In Dr. Waterston's initial case notes, dated October 9, 1863, he writes, "The child exhibits profound disorientation regarding his own identity. He insists with alarming conviction that his name is Thomas Wilkins, and that he is a corporal in the 14th Virginia Infantry. He describes in distressing detail his supposed death on the second day of the Gettysburg engagement, claiming to have been bayoneted in the abdomen during the assault on Cemetery Ridge." When speaking of these events, his dialect shifts perceptibly to a Virginian accent, despite having never been exposed to such speech patterns. What makes this case particularly remarkable is the historical accuracy of details that, by all rational assessment, should have been entirely unknown to a 5-year-old child who had never traveled beyond Carlisle. In subsequent interviews, transcribed verbatim and preserved in the Waterston files, Samuel/Thomas described military formations, commanding officers, and battlefield topography with a precision that would later be verified against Confederate military records. The child spoke with the vocabulary and cadence of an adult man, describing the, quote, "intolerable summer heat," and how "the body's bloated quick in that weather," phrases entirely incongruous with his developmental stage. When shown a map of the Gettysburg battlefield, intentionally mislabeled by Dr. Waterston, the child immediately identified the errors, correctly placing landmarks and troop positions that aligned perfectly with military records of the engagement. Dr. Waterston, initially skeptical, methodically ruled out conventional explanations. The Holloway home contained no books on the recent battle. No newspapers with detailed accounts were accessible to the child, and the family had no connections to Virginia or the Confederate military. Indeed, Professor Holloway was known to have Unionist sympathies, making the child's apparent identification with a Southern soldier all the more perplexing. Dr. Waterston went so far as to interview the household staff, the child's nursemaid, and family friends, finding no possible source for the detailed military knowledge the boy possessed. In a letter to his colleague Dr. Frederick Barnett at Harvard Medical School, Waterston confessed, "I began this investigation certain I would uncover some mundane explanation, parental influence, overheard conversations, perhaps even a deliberate hoax. I can now state with professional certainty that none of these explanations are sufficient to account for what I have witnessed. The precision of military knowledge, the emotional authenticity of the accounts, and the physiological manifestations defy conventional explanation. The Waterston files contain a particularly disturbing transcript from November 17, 1863. During this session, Samuel/Thomas became highly agitated when questioned about his death. Speaking in the first person, he described, "We were ordered forward at dusk. The light was bad. I remember the smell, gunpowder and blood and horsehair. I saw the Federal line breaking and ran forward. Then I felt it. Cold metal in my gut, pushing up under my ribs. I looked down and saw the Union boy's face. Couldn't have been more than 16. He was crying as he pushed the bayonet deeper. I fell and felt the blood pooling underneath me. I lay there all night, watching stars appear. By morning, I couldn't feel my legs. I died as the sun was coming up." During this recollection, medical notes indicate that the child's pulse slowed dramatically and his body temperature dropped several degrees. Physiological responses that Dr. Waterston noted were inconsistent with deception or performance, particularly in one so young. Medical records from Samuel's birth show no unusual circumstances, no traumatic brain injuries, no periods of high fever or illness that might explain his condition. The Holloways, devout Presbyterians, initially interpreted their son's behavior as some form of demonic influence. They consulted their pastor before turning to medical science. Reverend George Phillips of First Presbyterian Church in Carlisle documented his visit with the family on August 10, 1863, writing, "The boy speaks of events he could not possibly know, detailed descriptions of military life, the names of Confederate officers, the sensation of dying. This is not the prattling of a child. Whatever inhabits this boy's mind did not originate there. While I hesitate to invoke supernatural explanations, I find myself unable to account for what I have witnessed in theological terms familiar to our congregation. This lies beyond simple possession or spiritual influence as we understand them." What elevates this case beyond mere historical curiosity is the existence of military records confirming the existence of Corporal Thomas Wilkins, 14th Virginia Infantry, reported killed during the second day of fighting at Gettysburg. According to Confederate casualty reports, Wilkins died of a bayonet wound to the abdomen. His body recovered from the eastern slope of Cemetery Ridge. He was 24 years old, born in 1839 in Augusta County, Virginia. Examination of military archives conducted by Dr. Waterston revealed that Wilkins had enlisted in April 1861, fought at First Manassas, the Peninsula Campaign, and Chancellorsville before meeting his end at Gettysburg. His service record noted a commendation for bravery at Chancellorsville. There is no conceivable way the Holloway family could have known these details, as Confederate casualty lists were not widely published in Northern newspapers, particularly with such specific details of individual soldier deaths. The 14th Virginia's regimental records were not publicly accessible, being held in Richmond throughout the ongoing conflict. In December 1863, Dr. Waterston arranged an extraordinary experiment. With the reluctant permission of the Holloways, he took Samuel to Gettysburg. The battlefield was still scarred from the summer's fighting, with temporary graves and debris visible across the landscape. Winter had settled over the rolling hills, a light snow dusting the ground where thousands had fallen months earlier. Without prompting or guidance, the 5-year-old led Dr. Waterston directly to a location on Cemetery Ridge. According to Waterston's field notes, the child moved with purpose, as if following a map visible only to him. Despite the transformation of the landscape by winter and the removal of most battle debris, he navigated unerringly through the terrain. Upon reaching a particular spot on the eastern slope, he became visibly distressed, clutching his abdomen and declaring, "This is where I fell. This is where I bled out." The location corresponds precisely with Confederate positions during the July 2nd assault, as verified by military maps I later consulted. A photographer accompanying the doctor captured an image of the moment, a small boy standing on the slope, his face a mask of adult grief, pointing to the ground where he insisted he had died. This photograph, preserved in the Waterston files, shows a child whose expression defies his physiological age. The boy's eyes, as captured by the early photographic process, possess what Waterston described as an uncanny awareness entirely inconsistent with childhood. In the background, faintly visible, are the temporary grave markers that still dotted the battlefield. Dr. Waterston later wrote, "I have looked into the eyes of dying men on battlefield hospitals. I recognized that same awareness in the child's gaze. It was not the presence of death that disturbed me most, but the clear memory of it reflected in one so young." The case grows more complex with the introduction of another piece of evidence, a letter from Virginia. In February 1864, Dr. Waterston, pursuing every possible avenue of investigation, placed discreet inquiries with Confederate military authorities regarding Corporal Wilkins. This eventually led to correspondence with Thomas Wilkins' sister, Mary Wilkins Patterson of Staunton, Virginia. The letters had to cross battle lines through intermediaries, a testament to Waterston's determination to verify the case details. Without revealing the full nature of his inquiry, Waterston requested any personal information about the deceased soldier. Mrs. Patterson's response, preserved in the files, unwittingly provided verification of details Samuel had mentioned. "My brother Thomas was indeed at Gettysburg with the 14th Virginia," she wrote. "We received notification of his death in August. His captain wrote that he was killed by bayonet during the fighting on Cemetery Ridge." Thomas had a distinctive birthmark on his left forearm, a red patch in the shape of what our mother always called a maple leaf. He also walked with a slight limp from a childhood riding accident when he was thrown from a horse at age 11. Before leaving for the war, he buried our mother's silver brooch under the large oak tree on our property, telling me that if he didn't return, I should consider it my inheritance. No one else knew of this hiding place. He was educated at the local academy and had a particular fondness for astronomy, often spending nights identifying constellations. His closest friend was William Carrington, who fell at Antietam last year. What makes this correspondence remarkable is that Samuel Holloway had independently described both the birthmark and the buried brooch months earlier. Dr. Waterston's notes from October 29, 1863, record. When asked to describe Thomas Wilkins' appearance, the child immediately mentioned the maple leaf on my arm and rolled up his own sleeve, pointing to an unmarked spot on his left forearm. He then recounted hiding mother's silver brooch with the blue stone beneath an oak tree before departing for military service. In subsequent sessions, Samuel had mentioned both his friendship with Will Carrington and how they would name the stars together on summer nights, details that precisely matched Mrs. Patterson's independent account. Even more extraordinary, when examined by Dr. Waterston, Samuel Holloway was documented as walking with a subtle but noticeable limp, favoring his right leg, a physical characteristic that had not been present before July 1863, according to his parents and the family physician, Dr. Henry Lambert. No physical injury had occurred to explain this sudden development. In his medical examination notes, Dr. Waterston observed, "The gait abnormality presents as consistent with post-recovery compensation from a healed femur fracture, precisely matching the description of Thomas Wilkins' childhood injury. X-ray technology would be invaluable in this case, but absent such tools, physical examination reveals no actual skeletal abnormality in the child, despite the persistent limp." The Waterston files document the case's progression over the following years. From 1864 to 1866, Samuel experienced what the doctor termed a gradual integration of personalities. The episodes of identifying as Thomas Wilkins became less frequent, though the memories remained intact. By age 8, Samuel could access the Wilkins memories but recognized them as somehow separate from his own life experience, a distinction Dr. Waterston found particularly significant. In session transcripts from May 1866, the child explained, "I know I am Samuel, but I remember being Thomas too. Both are true. It's like having a room in my mind where Thomas lives, and I can visit him there." This development fascinated Dr. Waterston, who noted, The boy has developed a remarkable cognitive framework for accommodating these dual identities. Unlike cases of dissociative disorder, there is no loss of continuity or awareness. Rather, he has constructed a functional integration that allows both identities to coexist without psychological disruption. The case took another remarkable turn in October 1866 when Dr. Waterston arranged for Mary Wilkins Patterson to travel from Virginia to Pennsylvania. The meeting between Samuel and the sister of the man whose memories he seemingly possessed was documented by both Waterston and a colleague, Dr. William Foster, who was brought in as an independent observer. Mrs. Patterson was not told the nature of the meeting beforehand, only that it concerned her brother's military service. The encounter took place in a private room at the Continental Hotel in Philadelphia, with both physicians present. According to both doctors' accounts, when Samuel entered the room, Mrs. Patterson visibly paled. Without prompting, the child looked at her and said, "Mary, you've cut your hair. Mother would be scandalized." This was particularly evidential, as Mrs. Patterson had indeed worn her hair long until recently, a fact unknown to the Holloways or Dr. Waterston. More remarkably, in the conversation that followed, Samuel referenced private family matters, childhood incidents, and intimate details that Mrs. Patterson confirmed could only have been known by her brother. Dr. Foster's detailed notes catalog over 20 such specific recollections, each independently verified by Mrs. Patterson. At one point, according to Dr. Foster's notes, Samuel said, "Remember when you fell through the ice on Miller's Pond, and I pulled you out? You made me swear never to tell Father, because you had been forbidden to go there." Mrs. Patterson reportedly began weeping, later confirming that this incident had occurred when she was 12 and Thomas was 14, and that they had indeed kept it secret from their parents. Samuel then accurately described the layout of the Wilkins family home in Augusta County, naming pieces of furniture and their positions, the view from Thomas's bedroom window, and the location of a hidden space beneath a floorboard where Thomas had kept personal items. When shown various objects brought by Mrs. Patterson, he instantly identified his father's pocket watch and a small wooden figurine he had carved as a boy, passing over other items that did not belong to the family. The scientific implications of the case were profound enough that by 1867, Dr. Waterston had quietly assembled a committee of distinguished physicians and scientists to examine Samuel and review the evidence. This committee included Dr. Foster, Dr. Barnett of Harvard Medical School, Dr. Charles Williams of Pennsylvania Hospital, and Dr. James Reed, a respected physician who had served with the Union Army Medical Corps during the war. Each member was selected for their scientific rigor and professional skepticism. Their collective assessment, documented in a confidential report dated March 1867, acknowledged the inexplicable nature of the case. After 3 days of interviews, examinations, and review of all documentation, the committee submitted a 42-page analysis. The report concluded, having exhausted all conventional medical and psychological explanations, we find ourselves in the uncomfortable position of documenting a case that defies current scientific understanding. The child Samuel Holloway demonstrates knowledge, memories, and physical characteristics that cannot be explained through any known mechanism of heredity, education, or influence. The specificity and verification of these memories, the physiological manifestations, and the consistent internal coherence of the narrative exceed any possibility of fabrication, particularly given the subject's age at onset. While we hesitate to endorse supernatural explanations, we must acknowledge that this case suggests the possible persistence of memory and identity beyond physical death. This scientific assessment was never published. The report exists only in the Waterston files, with a notation indicating that publication was deemed potentially destabilizing to the public understanding of human consciousness and contrary to prevailing religious sensibilities. The committee members agreed to maintain confidentiality, though Dr. Reed later referenced a remarkable case of apparent memory transference in an 1870 lecture at the University of Pennsylvania Medical School without naming the individuals involved. His lecture notes, preserved in the university archives, hint at the profound implications, If consciousness can persist beyond physical death or transfer between individuals, our entire understanding of human identity requires reconsideration. By 1868, when Samuel was 10 years old, the manifestations of Thomas Wilkins' identity had significantly diminished. According to Dr. Waterston's notes, the boy now speaks of Thomas in the third person, though he retains all memories with remarkable clarity. When questioned about the mechanism of his knowledge, he states simply, "I remember dying. Then I was someone else." Physical examinations during this period documented that Samuel still walked with the characteristic limp, though it had become less pronounced. He continued to demonstrate knowledge of astronomy that exceeded what would be expected for his age, a particular interest of Thomas Wilkins, according to his sister. A particularly noteworthy development occurred in September 1868, when Samuel accurately predicted the position of a comet that had not yet been documented in any publication accessible to the family. Astronomical records later confirmed that the celestial coordinates he provided matched the comet's actual path. When questioned about this knowledge, Samuel explained that Thomas used to calculate orbital paths as a hobby, a fact later confirmed by Mrs. Patterson, who provided her brother's astronomy notebooks from before the war. The Holloway family's experience during these years is documented through their correspondence with Dr. Waterston. Initially terrified and confused, they gradually developed what Margaret Holloway described as a reluctant acceptance of the inexplicable. Professor Edward Holloway, despite his academic background and initial skepticism, wrote in 1866, "We have come to understand that our sun contains multitudes. Science offers no explanation, religion provides little comfort. We simply proceed day by day, loving the child before us, whoever else he may also be. In time, we have come to see this not as a curse, but as an extraordinary window into the mystery of consciousness. Samuel remains our beloved son, but he has been expanded in ways we cannot fully comprehend." Margaret Holloway's diaries, excerpts of which are preserved in the Waterston files, reveal the intimate daily reality of raising a child with dual memories. Samuel asked today if he might visit his other mother in Virginia. I explained again that she had passed on before Thomas went to war. He nodded and said he remembered the funeral now, the black bunting on the doorway and the smell of lilacs. Then he looked up at me and said, "But you're my real mother." There is heartbreak and wonder in equal measure in these moments. The case's final documented chapter came in 1871, when Samuel, now 13, asked to visit the Wilkins family plot in Staunton, Virginia. Dr. Waterston, still intensely involved in the case, accompanied the boy and his father on this remarkable pilgrimage. Despite the lingering post-war tensions, they traveled into the former Confederacy, where Edward Holloway later wrote, "They were received with remarkable grace by those who should consider us enemies." His notes from this visit describe Samuel standing before Thomas Wilkins' memorial stone, the actual body having been buried at Gettysburg, and experiencing what Waterston termed a profound emotional release. According to Waterston's account, Samuel placed his hand on the memorial stone and said clearly, "I can rest now. We can both rest." In that moment, Dr. Waterston observed, a visible transformation came over the child, as if some long-held tension had finally released. In the weeks following this visit, Samuel reported no further dreams or memories of Thomas Wilkins' life. The limp that had characterized his gait for 8 years gradually disappeared. By December 1871, Dr. Waterston noted, "The boy appears to have fully integrated the experience. He remembers Thomas Wilkins' life clearly, but no longer experiences any confusion regarding his own identity." When asked about Thomas now, he speaks with the detached clarity of one discussing a well-known but separate individual. The episode appears to have reached its natural conclusion, though its implications for our understanding of consciousness remain profound. The final document in the Waterston files is a letter from Edward Holloway, dated June 1873. Samuel continues to develop as a normal, healthy boy of 15. He excels in his studies, particularly history, and has expressed interest in a military career. The events of the past decade have left their mark. He demonstrates an unusual maturity and occasionally speaks with an insight beyond his years, but he is undeniably himself now. Whatever doorway opened between Samuel and the Virginia soldier seems to have closed. We remain profoundly grateful for your guidance through this extraordinary passage. While we may never understand the purpose of this strange intersection of lives, we have come to see it as a reminder of the profound mystery at the heart of human existence. Here the documented case ends. The Waterston files contain no further correspondence or clinical notes. Historical records indicate that Dr. James Waterston died in 1875 of pneumonia, having never publicly published his findings on the Holloway case. His private papers, including the complete documentation of Samuel's case, were eventually donated to the Pennsylvania Historical Society by his daughter in 1901, with the stipulation that they remain sealed for 50 years, a restriction later extended by the Society's board. When questioned about this requirement, his daughter reportedly stated that her father had insisted, "Some knowledge is too profound for immediate dissemination," and that, quote, "future generations may be better equipped to interpret the implications." What became of Samuel Holloway? Military records confirm that Samuel Holloway of Carlisle, Pennsylvania, enlisted in the United States Army in 1876, ultimately achieving the rank of captain before retiring in 1898. His military records note distinguished service in the Western Territories, including participation in the Geronimo Campaign. Curiously, his commanding officers' reports frequently commended his unusual empathy for enemy combatants and his efforts to prevent unnecessary casualties. Census data indicates he married in 1882 to Elizabeth Chambers of Philadelphia and had 3 children. He died in 1927 at the age of 69, having lived a seemingly ordinary life despite his extraordinary childhood. In 1913, a small item appeared in the Carlisle Sentinel noting Captain Samuel Holloway's 50th anniversary pilgrimage to Gettysburg. According to the brief article, the retired officer visited the battlefield annually, paying particular attention to a specific location on Cemetery Ridge. When asked by the reporter about this tradition, Holloway reportedly smiled and said, "Let's just say I'm visiting an old friend." His military pension records indicate that he requested special permission to be buried at Gettysburg National Cemetery, despite not having fought there, a request that was denied due to regulations. Instead, his grave can be found in Carlisle Cemetery, the headstone bearing only his name and dates, with no reference to his unique place in psychological history. What are we to make of this extraordinary case? The Waterston files present evidence that defies conventional explanation. A 5-year-old child displayed knowledge, memories, and physical characteristics that correspond to a specific deceased soldier, facts verified through multiple independent sources. The scientific committee that examined the case found no evidence of fraud or conventional explanation. The physical documentation, including photographs, medical examinations, interview transcripts, and correspondence, establishes a chain of evidence that resists dismissal. Handwriting analysis confirms the authenticity of the documents, and the multiple independent witnesses eliminate any possibility of a single fabricator. Modern science still struggles with questions of consciousness, memory, and identity. The boundary between life and death, once thought absolute, has grown increasingly permeable in light of contemporary research into near-death experiences and consciousness studies. Quantum physics suggests possibilities regarding non-local consciousness that would have been dismissed as absurd in Waterston's era. The case of Samuel Holloway and Thomas Wilkins stands as an historical anomaly, too well documented to ignore, too inexplicable to comfortably classify. It resists both easy belief and easy dismissal, occupying an uncomfortable space in our understanding of human consciousness. The Pennsylvania Historical Society maintains the Waterston files in their special collections, accessible only to qualified researchers with specific approval. The original photograph of Samuel at Gettysburg, standing on the spot where he claimed to have died as Thomas Wilkins, remains one of the most haunting images in the collection. A child with ancient eyes pointing to the ground where his blood once soaked into Pennsylvania soil. Photographic analysis confirms the image has not been altered or manipulated. The image serves as a visual testament to a case that challenges our understanding of memory, consciousness, and the finality of death. Perhaps most compelling is the lack of sensationalism in the documentation. Dr. Waterston and his colleagues approached the case with appropriate skepticism and scientific methodology, exhaustively investigating conventional explanations before acknowledging the inexplicable nature of their findings. Their private correspondence reveals not eager believers in the paranormal, but reluctant witnesses to phenomena that defied their professional understanding. Dr. Barnett wrote to Waterston in 1868, "I entered this investigation determined to disprove your findings. I leave it humbled by the limitations of our current scientific framework. Whatever has occurred in the case of young Samuel Holloway, it suggests dimensions to human consciousness that our prevailing models cannot accommodate." The story of Samuel Holloway forces us to confront profound questions. If memories can somehow transfer from the dying to the living, what does this suggest about the nature of human consciousness? Is identity contained solely within the physical brain, or does some aspect of our selfhood exist independent of our physical form? Why would such a transfer occur between a Confederate soldier and a Northern child? Was proximity the determining factor, or some deeper resonance between souls? The Waterston files offer no definitive answers, only meticulously documented evidence of a case that transcends conventional understanding. In 1911, an elderly Samuel Holloway granted a single interview to Dr. Harrison Miller, a neurologist researching unusual memory phenomena. In the transcript, preserved in Miller's papers at Johns Hopkins University, Holloway reflects, "I have lived two lives, one as a Confederate soldier who died on Cemetery Ridge in 1863, another as the person speaking to you now. Both are equally real to me. Science cannot explain this, religion cannot adequately account for it. I have made my peace with the mystery. Perhaps some doorways are not meant to be fully understood, only witnessed. What I can tell you is this: death is not the end of memory. Whether that suggests the immortality of the soul or simply the persistence of information, I cannot say. I leave that to greater minds than mine." The case remains open to interpretation. Some modern researchers have suggested mechanisms involving quantum consciousness or non-local memory to explain such phenomena. Others point to the timing. Samuel's personality change occurred precisely when thousands of men were dying violently at Gettysburg, just 30 miles from his home. Was there something about that concentrated moment of death that temporarily thinned the membrane between lives? Did the intensity of Thomas Wilkins' final experience somehow imprint itself on the receptive consciousness of a child? The proximity, both geographical and temporal, seems unlikely to be coincidental. We may never know. What remains undeniable is the documentation itself. Clinical observations, verified historical details, physical manifestations, and multiple expert witnesses, all testifying to a case that challenges our understanding of consciousness and identity. In an age of rational explanation and scientific certainty, the story of the boy who remembered dying at Gettysburg stands as a documented mystery that resists our need for neat classification. The Waterston files remind us that the boundary between life and death may be more permeable than we care to admit. They suggest that memory, the very foundation of identity, might sometimes flow between vessels in ways we cannot yet comprehend. In the words of Dr. Waterston's final note on the case, perhaps consciousness, like energy, cannot be destroyed, only transformed. The implications of such a possibility extend far beyond this single case, touching on the fundamental nature of human existence. As you consider this extraordinary case, examine the evidence with both skepticism and openness. The story of Samuel Holloway and Thomas Wilkins exists in the liminal space between documented fact and inexplicable mystery, challenging us to expand our understanding of human consciousness and the boundaries of individual identity. Whatever conclusion you reach, the case stands as a remarkable testament to the complexity of human experience and the humbling limitations of our knowledge about life, death, and the persistence of memory. The photographs remain in the archives. The documents continue to exist. The mystery endures. And somewhere between Cemetery Ridge and a child's transformed mind lies a truth about consciousness that we are still struggling to comprehend.